Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Project Dreammaker podcast. I'm here with Bruce Alexander, who is, because I want to get this right, Bruce, husband to Ann, obviously, dad to Josh, Caleb, Emma, and Steph, coach of the Latrine Hawks under 13 Rep B hockey team, and I'm not going to ask you what their record is, and the president of the Raymond EMC Enclosures Ltd. And I'm your host, Stephen R. Burns. I want to talk, when we do this podcast, we always talk, it's for entrepreneurs, it's for artists, it's for those in the game. And we talk about starting out and starting over. So tell me a little bit about your childhood and what that was like growing up for you.
Yeah, sure. So it's funny, I was talking to somebody about this today. I come from an almost good family, and that comes from a guy I traveled with, and his brother used to hate it at weddings when people would stand up and say, I come from a really great family, and he'd always be like, nobody's family is that good. So he always said, whenever he gave wedding speeches or stuff like that, he'd always say, my family is an almost good family. So I came from an almost good family. I'm an adopted child. My parents, I have a brother and sister, younger brother, older sister, both natural children of my parents. I was adopted, middle child, and grew up on a farm in Cumberland, Ontario. Loved sports, loved farm stuff. I was a typical country kid. My parents, they owned a 90-acre farm, but they didn't farm it. My dad was actually a PhD in chemistry and just a brilliant scientist. And my mom was also an academic, and he rented our farmland to a neighboring farmer. So I kind of grew up with the country work ethic influence, and also the academic approach to everything. And my dad was a bit of an oddball. Like, he approached everything as a scientist. Like, everything was about testing theory and what you could learn from something and using procedure and stuff like that. So I grew up with a very academic approach to life, as well as, my dad, having come from the farm himself, really a high value of that farm, 14-hour days and sweating all day long, and don't complain about it because that's what you got to do.
Wait, so your dad, he grew up on an actual, like he grew up on a farm that was farming, like that was used?
Correct, that's farming? Right, yeah.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah. Now, my dad's story is really interesting, and he passed away in 2005, but I miss him so much still. It's almost like my parents skipped a generation before having a family. They were both married late. My dad was born in 1914 and didn't get married until he was in his late 40s. So that was also an interesting perspective. Growing up, my parents were the same age as my friends' grandparents. My dad lived through the Depression. He lived through World War II. He saw the Cold War. The whole thing. He lived through it. So it was a very interesting perspective. He had a very old-fashioned approach to life, and a very simple approach, in spite of the fact that he was a very talented and competent scientist.
Yeah, it's a really interesting bridge, sort of between two worlds, right? And I know, like, my mom, who was an only child, but her father was in his early 50s when he had her. So, and he passed in 1980. But it was the same sort of thing. And, he came from a family of 11 kids or 12 kids, I think. And so it was just that sort of, and what's interesting here, like, you have one generation here and one generation here. But what's interesting to me is that what your business does kind of does the same thing in a way, right?
Yeah. We're an interesting business. I don't. Do you want me to sort of explain what we do and see if you can get it? See if you can get it this time.
No. For those who don't know, Bruce and I did this interview before, and then something happened, and most of the interview was lost. So we're doing this again, and I'm going to say the same thing I said last time, is that the Office meme where, you know, explain it to me like I'm 5, because it gets complicated quickly, but you can do it because you've explained it to me before. So just explain it to people listening. Yeah.
So it sounds complicated, but it's not. What Raymond EMC does is we manufacture radio frequency shielded enclosures and test chambers. So essentially, it's a big metal box that keeps either radio waves out or keeps radio waves in. Now, it could be a tabletop enclosure for testing small devices, or we've built enclosures the size of like a hockey rink. So it's basically 6 sides, all metal, and it just keeps radio waves out or in. That's what we do. There's several industries that we support. The main one that we support is what's called electromagnetic compatibility testing. And this is the way that electronics get along with other electronics. And I've used the illustration before of, if you're driving in your car, you know, you've got an electronic throttle module and an electronic braking module. And if you at the airport where there's this really strong radio frequency signal that guides planes down onto the runway, you don't want that signal to interfere with your car and tell your throttle module to go full blast and your braking module to stop working. That would be really bad. So all of these electronic devices in automotive, in household electronics, commercial electronics, aviation, aerospace, military, it's all tested to ensure that it won't malfunction when it's in the presence of strong electromagnetic fields, and also so that it doesn't emit too much electromagnetic energy and interfere with other devices that it may be close to. So we equip our clients to do that testing and ensure that their electronic devices are electromagnetically.
He just froze. We'll have him back in a second, don't worry.
I think I lost you there for a minute.
No, you just froze for a second.
Okay.
Hopefully, every time you talk about this is exactly, by the way, folks,
I know.
the conversation lasts. As soon as he starts talking about electromagnetic waves, like the conversation is like, oh yeah, and then there's a freeze. So this is what happens. So, but this time, I think last time though you had to sign off, right? Like I think.
Yeah, no, the connection went unstable, so I think we're good.
Okay, yeah, this is okay. So. And the reason I mentioned this earlier in the interview was about how, you know, bridging gaps is because the people that work under, like for you in your business, you have some who only have high school, and you have 3 engineers, right? So yeah. There's a real balance with, and you started out, and I love this part of your story, and I want you to tell it for people so that they understand. And some people that work in your business who aren't university graduates, they're not PhDs, they're installers, which is exactly how you started, right?
Yeah, correct. And I think that sort of my experience, you know, to make a very long story short, I'm 51 and I've been in the industry since for almost 30 years now. Anyway, I started off working for a landscaper. He did some installs, you know, putting these rooms together. I helped him with that. And then when Raymond EMC was purchased, or it was an old company that was purchased by the new owner, he needed a tester. Grade 13 physics was enough that I understood wave theory and electromagnetics. So I went from being the landscaper's laborer to being his technical authority and verifying that he was doing his job correctly. So that was sort of an interesting dynamic to navigate. And then I worked in the industry sort of part-time for a number of years. And then I believe it was 2002, I sort of decided, you know what, I've got to be singly focused here, and either, you know, I was working in a church setting and sort of part-time, doing some you know, public speaking and stuff like that, and then doing working in this industry to supplement my income. And I sort of got to the point where I realized, you know what, I need to go singly focused on one way or the other. Right. I need to go singly focused, and I've got 3 kids, and I got to feed them. So, and this business thing is working out pretty good. So that's the direction that I went. So I started my own install company, and for a number of years I did installs for a few other companies, but mostly for Raymond EMC. And then just the way that things came together, I had an opportunity to buy the company in, we started talking about it in 2010, but I closed the deal in 2012. So I bought the company in 2012. So it is an interesting company because we have technicians and we've got engineers. Right. Your technicians are just putting stuff together, and I don't even like saying it, they're just putting stuff together. Without the technicians, Raymond EMC dies, because they're really the ones that get the real work done. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and I think it probably just flows naturally from me being an installer. There's a tremendous amount of respect for our guys that work with their hands from the academic side, so the office side. We really look at them as the source of most of our knowledge, and then we apply engineering principles and sort of figure out why things work when they do it this way and why things don't work when they do it this way. But it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, and I love that because it's coming from the top down, because you were the installer, now you're the owner of the business. That leadership is going to naturally feed itself into the company, right? So you don't have the imbalance where whether it's the educator or your administrators, right? We have this in all different fields, are feeling like, hey, listen to me, to people down below them. And I could dig into that, but I want to go to talking about buying. And when we talked before, Bruce, you had mentioned that it wasn't a risk for you, but other people might have considered a risk when you bought the company. And I know, like, for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this, we talk about risk assessment. Somebody says, I want to do this business, I want to do this on my own, I want to start this online business or whatever. But I love you have this kind of interesting theory in that. And so I'm gonna ask you a two-part question. So the first one is, when you decided to buy the business, why was it that you didn't see it as risky? Because it was fairly expensive, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the way that I bought the business is I did it on what's called a vendor take-back loan. So I paid a smaller than normal deposit and spent 5 years working my guts out to pay off the vendor take-back loan. I guess it was risky, but when I bought Raymond EMC, it felt like less risk than when I started my own install company. And I think it's because when I started my own install company, I think I've told you this before, I'd been doing installs for a little bit, and then I spent $70,000 on electronic test gear. That was probably the scariest moment. It was like, oh my gosh, $70,000. How's that going to pay for itself?
Yeah. Like, what if this doesn't work?
What if I can't sell this? What if I can't find clients? What if I can't, and it was, I cashed in a bunch of RSPs and bought the test gear, and I would say it was a slow start, but the thing is, I kept at it. And as I got to the point where Raymond EMC was on the table and for sale, I'd had enough experience in the industry and enough experience in running my own install business that it was the next logical step. And the interesting thing is, I was kind of getting bored doing installs. It was kind of like, okay, I've done this. I'm good at it. I'm making money. Like, what's the next challenge? And this presented itself, and it was sort of more, when I look back at it now, I look back more at embracing the challenge as opposed to taking a risk.
Well, then that's interesting, because I think there's a couple of lines to connect there for entrepreneurs. Is one, is that, yeah, let's say you're doing your regular day job and you're making money, and that's fine. But what's the next challenge for you? you know, like do that thing that lights you up. If you know, when I started the online course, How to Write in 90 Minutes, and I last year and this year, and started this YouTube channel and all of that, it's because it lights me up, right? To teach and it gives, and I just feel like sometimes for entrepreneurs in particular, and artists too, who are in their own way, you know, entrepreneurs, is like that's the call, right? That's the call that you should be listening to. And I'm not telling anybody ever to quit their day job, because I still haven't quit my day job. I still work with special needs kids during the day. I still enjoy it. But is the goal to not have to do that in the future? Yeah, that's the goal. So so your steps, that first one, you're right. I'd forgotten about that. The massive, and like at that time, the big investment, and you didn't have the surety of running your own business. And of course now, and here's one other thing I want to point out before I move on, because part of this, because I know you so well, is your personality and how it really helps entrepreneurs. Because to me, your personality, I would describe you as implacable. So, but I'll let you tell people how do you think your personality has helped you as an entrepreneur and running your own business?
So I can't tell you why exactly, but I've always had a very sort of calm demeanor. Never get too high, never get too low, just look at things. And sort of my approach to things is I'm much more of a we'll see person than a reactionary person, right? Like I get great news in the business from time to time, and I get bad news in the business from time to time. And I find my approach is always, okay, like especially with bad news, and entrepreneurs are dealing with, you know, we'll call it bad news all the time. Things don't go the way that you want them to go. You know, I remember probably one of the when I'd started doing installs, I was doing the installs. I had 2 guys working for me at that time. I was handling my payroll, all of my financials, and I forgot to pay my WSIB bill. So they froze my account. And I was like, how do you navigate this? So I'm like, okay, I can't be the first person this has happened to. I just need to figure out how to get through this. So I got on the phone with WSIB, and they said, yeah, here's what you need to do. You need to drop the money order off at the office, blah, blah, blah. So I took care of it. But I didn't freak out. I just figured, okay, you know what? There's got to be a solution here. I'm not the first person that's had this experience. So I'll figure it out and I'll sort it out.
Yeah, I just think that's so helpful for entrepreneurs to hear, because I'm a little bit more excitable than you, although
yeah. A little bit.
But you know, I'm almost 50 now, and so, you know, try to, you know, learn how to, and especially now I was a writer for a long time, and still obviously I'm a writer, but I mean, submitting novels, you face rejection. That's just part of the deal, you know, submit ideas for columns or for magazines or whatever, and you get the notice back, and no, this, you know, we're not interested. That's part of the life, right? And so, and now, of course, then this year, one of the things that I keep learning is even, and you know, we were talking about this before the show, is that I released my first Writing Life Academy. They're just short video that's going to be on this channel. Just quick writing tips. And I was actually a little bit nervous about it, but I listened to enough people that just said, just go forward. It's not going to be perfect. Don't worry about it. And then you fix it as you go. So, you know, so if something's not working, and so for anybody listening out there, I love Bruce's approach. And I think as much as you can, now it depends on your personality. So mine, you know, I'm not going to get to Bruce's level, but you know, one of the things is you gotta walk through it. And the last time we spoke, you had a good idea about failure, because when we talk about entrepreneurs, you say, oh, I launched this or product, or I was trying to do this and it failed. But you had an interesting spin on that.
Well, I think that I'm pretty hesitant to call anything a failure. And I think there's also, not everything goes well, not everything goes right as an entrepreneur. You're going to face adversity. That's part of the deal. And you and I are both sports guys. We both coached. You didn't ask about the Leitrim Hawks record. Thank you. Best group of kids I've ever coached. Haven't had a great record, but I think one of the things that we've done as a team is we've learned how to win in the loss. We've learned how to improve and get better each game, each practice. And yeah, you can go out there against a team that's stacked and they'll just smoke you. But you can still find fun in the challenge. You can still find fun in the, hey, you know what? I keep making this mistake. When I'm under pressure, I keep turning over the puck. I get under pressure and I hold on to the puck and I turn it over. So how do we fix that now? How do we make it so that you get under pressure and you either move the puck, you dump it in deep or something like that? I think in business, it's very much the same in that the losses don't have to be losses. And it's really how you frame the narrative around that for yourself, where you take the lessons out of the loss and say, okay, is there anything I could have done different? Is there anything I should have done different? Is there what can I be doing different? And it's don't expect. I think there's sort of especially in young entrepreneurs, there's this idea that, oh, I've got this great idea, everybody's going to love it. Well, what if they don't?
Yeah.
What if they don't? Then if you believe your idea is good, then you need to show them that they'll love that idea. And you're going to have to, put blood, sweat, and tears into it. And, certainly with my business, there's been a lot of long hours. I don't work the long hours like I used to, but there's been a lot of long hours, a lot of sore backs, a lot of cuts on my hands from handling metal on installs. It's been challenging, but I find that it's actually more enjoyable solving the challenge than when you solve it and it's over. Interesting story. So I told you I bought the company on a vendor take back loan,
right?
And it was cash flow was challenging for the 5 years of that vendor take back loan, right? Like it was really challenging to keep payroll going, keep paying our taxes, keep paying for materials, stuff like that. And we had to be very, very meticulous with our accounting and scheduling cash flow. And I paid off, the business was paid off. I got a call from my lawyer saying everything's filed, it's done. It was July 19, 2017. I was sitting on the dock at my cottage. My lawyer said it's done. And it was like, yes. And I went into a 3-month funk where it was just like, I thought I'd be happier. And I realized that I was actually enjoying the challenge of, I'm going to get to this milestone.
Right.
And I hadn't set any other milestones for myself, and I hadn't set any other challenges for myself. So as a result, I was like, okay, it's paid off. What do I do now? I don't know. Just show up to work, I guess. And I got into a bit of a sort of a 3-month funk where it was like, I thought I'd be a lot happier after I'd paid off the business, but I hadn't set myself up for a next challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting because that makes me think, and I have some really successful entrepreneur friends who, one of the things that makes them successful, but is they love the game. Like they love the process, right? And when I say love the game, I'm not talking about the entrepreneurship part being a game, but just comparing it to sports as you did. I remember a number of years ago, I coached a senior girls basketball team. I'd gone to this high school and they didn't have a coach for the senior girls team. And they said, well, if nobody's going to coach, then we'll have to cancel the team, right? The boys teams always get snapped up, right? So, and I had never coached girls before, only boys, but I said, oh, no, I'll do it. And we went 0-10 that year. Our best opportunity to win was the fourth quarter of the last game of the season. We had a 4-2 lead.
Wow.
And it was probably my favorite year coaching ever. They're wonderful kids. We learned a lot, you know, watched them grow, but had a really good time, which of course ultimately is what sports is about, aside from the side benefits. It teaches you stuff. But yeah, you got to enjoy the process. And I love that what you're saying to the entrepreneurs here is the goal is, you can set goals, but ultimately the goal has to still be enjoying the process, right? Like whether it's figuring out how to do this marketing thing, or whether it's figuring out who your target audience is, or maybe shifting from one product to another because you're not generating any leads with this one. And if you can enjoy yourself in that, because you are going to work long hours, right? I mean, that's
For sure.
You know, like I feel like there's this misnomer. People are like, oh, we're going to build passive income. Yeah, it's passive income, but you got to work your ass off to get to passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So,
yeah, I do get a kick out of sort of the idea of an entrepreneur, and you know, you've got sort of you talk entrepreneurs and you think of like the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks and these guys are all outliers. Okay. If you can do that, good for you, more power to you. But they're a handful of outliers. And most entrepreneurs, it's a very rewarding, but it's a daily grind. And I found that, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that you know, that my company is doing well, and that I live a very comfortable lifestyle. I didn't always, like there was a time where Ann and I didn't have two nickels to rub together. And, you know, so, and what I've learned is if you're not happy with nothing, you're not going to be happy with something. And it really becomes more about the journey and the challenge of, okay, getting to that next milestone. And for the young entrepreneurs, don't set the milestones too high. You know, like don't like, you know, some people start a business, they've got a great idea, and it's like in a year and a half, I'm going to be 100% employed by my business. It's like, well, if you're going to beat the odds then by ×2, because it takes about 3 years for a startup to get profitable. And that's when somebody's working full time in that business, if it's going to be successful. And of course, there's always the, you know, well, 80% of startups fail. Don't let that discourage you, because usually, you know, when you hear 80% of startups fail, it's because some guy is, or some girl is, you know, taken like 7 or 8 shots at it and had, you know, 2 successful companies and the rest were a bust. But they keep living that journey and hitting those milestones. And you know, as far as failure in business goes, be careful what you label a failure, because just because it's not a win doesn't mean that it's a loss.
No, and you know, even if you 2 things I want to touch on. Number one, when it comes to working hard, and we joked about that, but listen, I can tell you this: I was a writer. In my early 20s, I decided I really wanted to become a novelist. That's really what I wanted to do. And of course, it influenced. I didn't go to school for teachers college because I didn't want to be working after school marking papers. And so it took 25 years, you know, over 2 decades of writing every day, you know, Bruce. And listen, I stunk in the beginning. Like I would write something and think, this is awesome. And I'd look at it the next day and I'd realize, holy smokes. You know, I'd open my book, and I was whatever book I was reading, and I'd be like, these 2 things are not the same, you know. Yeah. And so it took a long time to become to the point where now, as an author and editor and a writing coach and creator of a writing course, but that took years and years of discipline and doing it. And the other second thing I want to say is, if you can create a business that gives you $500 extra a month and you love doing it, you know, as you say, keep your day job or whatever, but now you have this side business where it's an extra $500 a month or an extra $1,000 a month. For a lot of people, that's game changing in two ways. Number one, you're going to be more happy because you're actually doing something you like. And two, that's a lot of money, right? An extra 10, 15,000 a year is a lot of money. And so you're winning twice. And so that's why, you know, like I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you know, like Bruce says, take his advice. Don't set that bar at I'm hitting $500,000 in 2 years, right? You know, if you get there, awesome. To me, what I've learned is the bar is set as I'm trying to learn something new, one or two things new about what I'm doing every week, right? And so then you take that information, and I mentioned earlier, I have writing videos that are now going out on my YouTube channel. Bruce, last year, to put out one of those videos would take me a couple of weeks work.
Sure.
You're right, like figuring out how to use PowerPoint, figuring out how to use the video, figuring out, you know, all that stuff. I can do them in one day now, like an 8-minute video. That's write the script, record it, video it, and post it. And it takes one day. That's the difference, right?
And that's the thing about entrepreneurship too, is entrepreneurs will find their flow. And I realize that, you know, the idea of find your flow is sort of a very typical business jargony thing to talk about these days. But you do find the things that you love to do and the things that you're really, really good at and the things that you can leverage in your business. And as you grow, like for instance, with my company, as we've grown, you know, we've hired people to do more work, but we've also hired so that I can step out of doing the things that I just don't flow in. Like, don't ask me to balance books. I already told you I forgot to pay my WSIB you know, back in the early 2000s. It's like I'm not an accounting guy, so find the accounting person who loves to do that and empower them to do what they do and where they flow. And that allows me to do what I like to do and where I can find that flow. In the beginning, when you start a small business, obviously you have to do it all. But as you grow, you find those things that you can leverage and be good at. And you know, and you know, some people their goal in entrepreneurship may be that extra $1,000 a month or extra $500 a month doing, like, you know, most of us, when we do the things we love, we have to pay somebody else. So if you can find something you love to do and get people to pay you to do it at the same time, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, but you can leverage other people's talents, skills, and abilities, because there's people out there. Like if I was, you know, working a regular job and running a side thing, I would be looking for somebody to take care of my accounting. Definitely, because I'm not good at it. I don't like it. And it makes things I just don't like it. So I would be looking to leverage, even though it's only going to be, you know, a couple hours a month for somebody that's earning $1,000 a month in their business. Hey, you know what? Don't get bogged down, because it's like you said, you've now gotten good at video. But it took you a while to get there. Now you really enjoy doing that. If you didn't enjoy editing, you know what? There's lots of people that are really good at editing that would be happy to help out edit. You know, so there's always somebody there that you can leverage and work with, and you know, there's always those options, and really finding what you love and how you flow is important.
Yeah, and you can always partner too. Like that's the other thing about it being like the entrepreneurship is the community is, you know, okay, so I teach writing, right? I do writing videos. So who then can I partner up with also, right? That doesn't teach writing, but maybe they're in the education system, or and I think you and I have mentioned this. Maybe you're an owner and you have tradespeople, and you just want to help them learn how to write a little bit better, right? So, or you're an educator and something like that. So it's the convergence of you know, what you love to do like you, I hate accounting. You know, my dad was an accountant.
Yeah.
And the apple
Right.
rolled really far from the tree, down a hill, into the ocean. And so, and I have heard, like, when you listen to the top guys, they say when your business gets to the point where you know, you're successful enough as an entrepreneur, you always delegate. You know, don't work on the stuff that you really hate. You know, it'll drag you down. But that's also the opposite, like we were talking about earlier, was why if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you do something that you love, right?
Yeah.
This is true for artists as well. You want to write, because even if you're not making any money off of it, you'll be better for it, you know. Or if you're a painter,
Correct.
paint, you know.
Yeah.
Who cares if you're only selling that painting for $20? Like, just do it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And that's one of the things about entrepreneurship, especially when you're starting out. You know, a guy told me years ago about business. He said, you can't steer a ship that isn't moving. So if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, about doing something in business, you know, providing a good or a service, whatever it is you want to do, you can't just sit there and wait for it to materialize and happen. It's kind of like, you know, if you went fishing, you know, you wouldn't sit there with your fishing rod in hand and the hook not in the water, just waiting for the right fish to come along, right? Like I'm just waiting for that, you know, that 5.5 pound bass to swim by, and then I'm going to throw like, that's not how you fish. You throw in a line and then you wait and you see what bites, and maybe nothing's biting today, or maybe something is, who knows? And entrepreneurship can be like that, where it's like, if you want to do something, then do something. And start moving forward, and you'll figure out, you know, you can course correct as you go. You know, okay, well, this isn't working out, I'm going to steer over here. That's a great way to get started, but you have to be doing something.
Yeah, I had another entrepreneur, Amberly Grant, on this show. Even though, depending on when I release them, this is season 1, you may hear after this. But I love what she said. She said it takes 20 seconds of courage. 20 seconds of courage just to do something. Like, go, like, you think this is a good idea, try it. Go do it. And if we have that mindset, we're far more likely to not only get started, but to keep going. Well, listen, Bruce, man, this has been awesome. We got the whole thing this time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Nice. Excellent.
All right, folks. Bruce, your information will be down below if people want to reach you, correct? I can put that
RaymondEMC.ca.
Okay.
RaymondEMC.ca, and all of our company info is there. So if you didn't understand the description of electromagnetics, you can go on our website and see if you can figure it out.
I've heard it a few times now. I'm starting to get it. So
nice.
All right, guys, listen, my name is Stephen R. Burns. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have a free gift. Just click on the link for you, a free writing guide for you. Just let me know where to send it. And we will see you back very soon. Take care.